Call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore.
Here.
Felder.
Here.
Whitman.
Here.
Eglangeli.
Here.
Vining.
Excuse.
Germaini.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. I'd ask you all please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Grant us the strength to manage the challenges ahead and the wisdom to identify opportunities as we strive to serve our community. As we make decisions, grant us the gift of an open mind, the willingness to learn, and the humility to accept the ideas of others.
Pledge allegiance.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item, please.
The first item are any amendments to the agenda.
Looking to council if there's any amendments. Seeing none. Next item, please.
The next item are citizen comments not related to an agenda item.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take citizens' comments here at this part of our meeting, but also at the end. If there's any citizens wishing to make comments not related to an agenda item, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and mindful at the top of the agenda is the rules of the chamber, which is please contain your comments to 3 minutes. Any comments from those present here this evening? Yes, sir.
Mayor, Council, Dan Little, Monroe City Fire Department. I'm here to inform you and the citizens watching on TV today that the Monroe firefighters are holding our 28th annual golf outing on Monday, June 3rd at Sandy Creek Golf Course. $75 per person, $300 for a foursome. Includes 18 holes of golf with a cart, lunch at the turn, a steak dinner, and 6 drink tickets. The proceeds go towards our Monroe Fallen Firefighter Scholarship Fund and other charitable causes that we feel necessary to give to throughout the year. So if anybody's looking to play or help out, come see me or get a hold of us and we'll point you in the right direction. Thanks.
Other comments from those present here this evening not related to an agenda item? Seeing none, clerk, next item, please.
The next item would be the public hearing, item 2349, public hearing rezoning of 1150 Turns Drive, and I do not have any comments in the clerk's office.
Thank you. See Mr. at the podium. Are you going to have a little information and introduction prior to the public hearing?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jeffrey Green, Director of Community Development. Yes, I will have just a short
Sure.
introduction, a precursor to the public hearing. I know
you.
most of you have heard this on several different variations and different things that have been going on, but we did want to bring this back to you about the rezoning and a little bit of the history of 1150 Turns Drive, just so that you're aware of it, as well as those watching. Just a little bit of information, the size that we're speaking of today, that's the development of the area for Comfort Suites is about just over 2.5 acres. The zoning is C2, general commercial. They're wanting to rezone to a planned unit development or PUD. Originally, this was the Knights Inn, that most of you will remember. That closed in May of 2016 approximately. Taco Bell was working with the owners of that owner, or the Knights Inn, and again purchased a portion of it, the front 2 buildings, what we call the front 2 buildings of the Knights Inn, and essentially opened Taco Bell in August of 2016. Sam Paul LLC began discussions with the city of 2017. They're the current applicants for the rezoning, as well as developing the site into the Comfort Suites. And again, as I said, the proposed rezoning is to PUD, planned unit development. The proposed development would be a Comfort Suites hotel, 4 stories in height, approximately 68 rooms at this point, with a possible future development on the west side of the hotel development. Next steps would be action on the preliminary plan, action on the rezoning, review and approval of a final plan, and ultimately approval of the PUD agreement. So just to take a look at it, this is the site that we're looking at, and the 6 buildings up on the right-hand side in that quadrant, and the laser doesn't work on the television screen, so it's not going to help me or help you. But the 6 buildings were the Knights Inn complex. Development took place with Taco Bell going up on those north two. They demolished those. Currently, we're looking at the Comfort Suites development taking in that lower 4 buildings or the lower approximately 3/4 of the site. And again, just gives you another schematic. This is the Taco Bell. This is the site of the proposed hotel. And of course, this would be the future development, possibly a restaurant, cafe, those kind of things that they've been looking at. This is the exterior foundation or elevations of the building. Up on the top is the North Dixie elevation that you would see out in front of the building. The middle drawing or the middle elevation is what you would see from I-75. And of course, the lower is from Turns Drive. The rear portion of the building faces the what was Backyard Solutions and a lot of landscape and vegetation. So we're not really concerned about that, but that would be the top left side of the drawing. And again, just gives you a first floor elevation, and then, oops, guess we went too fast. And that one is the first floor, and there should have been a second floor in there. Nope. Somewhere it got lost in translation. But essentially, the second, third, and fourth floors would all be the same and would identify them as would make up the 68 rooms. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have at this point.
Any questions from council for Mr. Green? Seeing none. Mr. Pastu, anything further?
Public hearing is, it says for rezoning to PUD, but also the preliminary plan as well is part of the public hearing for tonight.
Very well. There's no comments at this point. I'll open the public hearing regarding item 2349 regarding the rezoning of 1150 Turnus Drive. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding this public hearing on the proposed rezoning? Any comments from council? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 2419, public hearing, established industrial development district, and there are no comments on file in the clerk's office.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu, is there any information regarding
I
this
asked
to
Mr.
start?
Cochran just to give a couple of
Sure.
words related to this item.
Mayor, Council Cochran, Assistant City Manager and Economic Development Coordinator. We've discussed this site and project before. This is the location of Shunley Steel USA and the manufacturing facility that they desire to build near I-75 between Hanwha and I-75. And so part of the incentive package that the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and the state of Michigan provided to Shunley included industrial facilities tax exemption. In order to approve that certificate, we have to establish an industrial development district. And so this is more or less paving the way. We haven't received or had any communication from Shunley requesting that IFT certificate yet. When we do receive that, that would go before the city's Economic Development Review Committee with a recommendation to council. But again, this is just the first step in streamlining that in anticipation of that certificate in the future.
For Mr. Cochran?
Thanks.
None? At this point, I'll open the public hearing regarding item 2419. The public hearing established the Industrial Development District as was stated. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding this public hearing? Any comments from those present? Any comments from council? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under council action, and it's item 2350, proposed ordinance 19-005, up for its final reading.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that ordinance number 19-005 be placed on the floor for its final reading.
There's a motion by Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Lamore regarding item 2350, proposed ordinance 19-005 to rezone 1150 Turnus Drive. Other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Michaelangeli?
Yes.
Germaini?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Ordinance 19-005, an ordinance to amend Part 2, Chapter 720, zoning, Section 720-23, zoning map of the Code of the City of Monroe, Michigan, to rezone the property located at 1150 Turns Drive. The City of Monroe ordains.
No final comments from council? Shall this ordinance pass?
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Yes. Angeli?
Yes.
Jermaine? Yes. Mayor Clark?
Yes.
The next item is item 2345, preliminary PUD plan 1150 Turns Drive. Motion to take oops, sorry, I got ahead of myself.
Just a little bit. That's okay. Moving right along here. That's good. So we'll need a motion to bring it forward for discussion. Mr.
If
Pastor,
I may,
yeah.
just as introduction to this item, we had separated the application for the PUD from the, and not uncommon, the preliminary plan for that PUD as separate actions on the part of the council. Mr. Green obviously went through some detail with it regarding the floor plan, site plan, as well as the elevations for the project. And that's really the essence, if you will, with the PUD plan itself at this point.
Your Honor, the Planning Commission, the Citizens Planning Commission has recommended approval of the preliminary PUD plan. Based on previous discussions on the project that we've been updated several times by the city administration on the progress of this. And based on what I saw in Mr. Green's presentation relative to the elevations of the hotel, I would recommend that we remand this back to the Planning Commission for further review. I think it's important, based on the position of this property and what's happening at that intersection and some of the other developments in that area, that at least the facade that faces on Turns Drive and the facade that faces on Dixie Highway could stand to use a little bit more finishing in the way of brick than what is currently being proposed. So I think that as part of the PUD, the Planning Commission and the applicant should take a look at enhancing the facades of the hotel in order to create the character that we're looking to create at the Dixie interchange with the projects that are currently underway. Those are the proposed development of the ProMedica Regional Hospital on the other side of the interstate, the fact that the city, the National Park Service, and other partners are investing money in the River Raisin National Battlefield Park. This property is situated within those influence areas, so I think it's appropriate that we request a higher quality of materials on the outside of the building. My motion, Your Honor, is to remand the preliminary PUD plan back to the Planning Commission for additional consideration.
I'll see if there's a second, then I'll have a comment to see if there's, before we take a vote.
I think I would support that.
Okay, there's a motion by Councilman Nicolini, supported by Councilwoman Whitman. So I just want to make a clarification, because I understand what the motion is, send it back to the Planning Commission, but I'm looking back at the fact sheet, and I think it was stated that the Planning Commission approved, but I just want to see if that's what I'm reading or not. It might just be a technical, how it reads here, but it says, after hearing presentations by staff and project architect, the commission voted to forward the preliminary PUD plan to the city council for review and determination whether to move the project forward. So it's almost like they're pushing it to us versus recommending, but maybe Mr. Buds will help me. And then they're saying if approved, bring it back to them for the proposed rezoning, but I'm a little confused on that paragraph.
Happy to push it back.
But that's kind of what I'm getting from your comment. Mr. Buds, if you can clarify that, is it worded correctly? Am I missing something?
Well, Your Honor, preliminarily, I guess I would say at this stage with where the council's at as far as action available after the recommendation from the CPC, the options available after the public hearing, which
Right.
was just held, city council can approve with changes or conditions, can table upon the finding that the plan does not meet the criteria or standards as set forth in the ordinance, but could meet such criteria if revised. City council may table that action until a revised preliminary plan is resubmitted, or deny. I don't see directly in our ordinance the ability to send it back to the CPC. I'm not saying that that couldn't be an option, but if I understand the councilman's comment that it's primarily, I'll call it building materials and facade improvements, I think that's something that this council itself could say that's the action that's desired and table it until that's brought forward to this group.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm going to get through that and get to that point. I understand Councilman Michelangelo's comments and what he's asking for. And as you go through those four, which was next, is probably to table with the request to send it back to the planning commission for the items in which were spoken to by Councilman Michelangelo. I don't want to speak for you as well, sir.
That's fine, but Councilman Felder.
Point of inquiry.
Yes, Councilman.
If we table with conditional changes, for it to be approved, does it have to be approved through the planning commission? So de facto would have to be approved by them anyway?
I don't know, based on my read of this, that it necessarily needs to go back. It could be, I think that this council could say that it was seeking these certain modifications, and that if this board then found that it was appropriate in its mind, after having already been recommended by the CPC as it was, I don't see any reason that the council could not take that action on their own. I also don't think there would be anything wrong with tabling it, saying submit that back to the CPC to see if it changes any of their recommendation. I think that's a discretionary item at this point in time.
So I'll ask the question because I think I see two options that are here. One is the table, as was stated. The other is to approve with changes or conditions, which is what I've heard. If that goes back to the planning commission and it's with conditions, say approved with conditions, and they take action, would it come back to the city council then after that? Okay, so I guess in concept, Councilman, as I heard you, is you're not opposed necessarily the development, the idea, the PUD, and as we're going, but you have some conditions on that. So I'm not going to say what your motion was, but I'm going to give you the opportunity
I
to
will
clarify.
change my motion. I don't have a problem tabling it, and I would prefer that it goes back to the planning commission to keep them engaged in the development process. I don't like changing what the planning commission, I'd rather have it go back and have them discuss it in more detail. So with the consent of the second, I will change the motion to suggest, the motion would be to table the preliminary PUD for further review and discussion by the planning commission. Okay.
I think there's something more, but go ahead, Council.
If I may, I don't want to have my comments have confused the matter. So I think that you could take action on the preliminary plan right now today, approve, table, deny, approve with conditions. No matter what, there's going to need to be a final plan that will go to the CPC and then will come back to this body before it would be final. So we're at preliminary plan now. And so if the idea is that you want to say, okay, I'm generally comfortable with the preliminary plan except for these concerns that you just stated, then I would say that could potentially be an approval with changes or conditions. Say you want to see that changed or modified before it goes back to the CPC for its final review.
It gets,
It's
I'm going to just make a comment because I think that gives at least movement forward, and it gives the applicant the understanding that I'll just say it's approval, but with changes and conditions being sought and then being sent to which it says sent back to the planning commission. I'm comfortable with the project. I understand the councilman's position of what he's looking for, and I think that with that message with approval going back, as opposed to no approval, I don't want the message to be that we're not wanting to move forward. So I know there's a motion in a second with the condition with a tabling, but I'd be comfortable with approving, but with the conditions as was shared by the councilman, because that way we're showing a path forward of progression of what the project could be.
Okay, I'll give it another shot.
Sure.
I've remanded, I've tabled, and now I'm going to approve with conditions. I'm trying to maintain as much leverage as possible for the
Absolutely.
city. So I make a motion that we approve the preliminary PUD with the exception, with the condition that we want to see more brick used on the front facade that fronts on Turns Drive and on Dixie Highway as a condition of consideration.
And there was a second, I'll have to look for the second for the councilwoman. Okay, so I want to make sure that the clerk has what I know she's up to date, so she keeps track of us. I understand that as you look through the option, it's approved with the changes or conditions that were mentioned. Of course, the clerk has those written as well.
I'm good.
The comments from council. Mr. Buds.
This is preliminary to this point, but I would also like to say, just when we get to final approval, what I will ask council is to make a requirement that there be a written PUD agreement with the
Right.
property owner as well as part of that final approval that would, I would ask come through my office as well.
And we'll see that back as well. So there's I think the motion and second is understood. I don't believe we need to have it revised. Obviously, it's the approval with the conditions as stated. With that, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Ekwangeli?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 2413, resolution opposing House Bill 4046, preemption of local zoning for short-term rentals.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu?
Your Honor, we talked a little bit about this during our work session. City administration had drafted a resolution in opposition to House Bill 4046, preempting local zoning for short-term rentals. Obviously, as the bill as initially introduced came out of committee with some changes that addressed some of the items that we expressed concern about in the resolution itself. But I think the council was looking for a statement that, in general, that we're opposed to not only the short-term rental preemption of local zoning, but all local zoning. And so, as a modification, so that we can move this along, knowing full well that it's going to have some additional hearings with it, that we include language that opposing House Bill 4046 as introduced in the preamble for that, and that on the actual motion language, I would just read, now therefore be it resolved that Monroe hereby opposes House Bill 4046 as introduced. Be it further resolved that the Monroe City Council opposes any and all preemption of local zoning, and that the last part be amended as well, that be it further resolved that the resolution be forwarded to the Monroe County legislative delegations, all members of the local government and finance committee, and I believe the committee that it's going to go next to, which is the House Committee on Tourism, and then also lastly forwarded to Governor Whitmer's office as well. Based on our discussion, the work session, I think I addressed as much as I could with those recommended changes.
Is there any comments or questions from council for Mr. Pastu before we bring it to the table? I think it does fall in line with our discussion at the work session previously, just some conversation. I'm just going to make a comment about this because this is not new. It was come up before last fall as this continues to rise at the state level. And I don't think there's a council member here that doesn't understand or support what short-term rentals can be. But the opposition comes from, as Mr. Pastu said, of the fact that once you have no voice in how they're managed and where they're managed, and the local governments don't have a voice, then you're going to just accept whatever happens. I think that's what really starts the conversation. So this opposition lets the legislators understand at least the city council's perspective or position on this. I'm not speaking for the other council members, just that's my comment. and I think it's something we have to continue to be aware of as things move forward. But I'll leave to other council members if they have any comments. If not, it is open to be placed on the floor.
Your Honor, I make a motion that we adopt the resolution as corrected by Mr. Pastu, opposing House Bill 4046 as introduced that would preempt local zoning and short-term rentals.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilwoman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine, regarding the resolution opposing House Bill 4446, which is item 2413 on the agenda, as was presented for amendments to the resolution. Further comments from council? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Emphatically, yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Michaelangeli?
Yes.
Germaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is the consent agenda, and for approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $1,236,360.69. 1236360.69.
Thank you. Any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda? Councilman Felder.
Your Honor, I would like item number 2412 pulled for further discussion.
Other items from council? I'm going to ask that 2409 be pulled just for a brief comment. See no other items from council. Are there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
Your Honor, make a motion that all items on the consent agenda be approved and their motions carried out and wrote down by the clerk.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine, that all items on the consent agenda not pulled for further discussion, that the actions be carried out and resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Michaelangeli?
Yes.
Germaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 2409, appointments to city boards and commissions.
Thank you. I did submit that to council for consideration. There was one appointment, and the person that put the applicant in is here, and I just want to make recognition of Maria Zagorski, who's here. She's in the back there to the left. Had a conversation with her and started talking about some opportunities to serve. And it came to be the Planning Commission in the precinct which she resides is Precinct 4. So I appreciate Maria for putting her interest in an application to be served on boards and commission. Also gives me the opportunity to say there's always needs on boards and commissions, but specifically on this for the Citizens Planning Commission, she will get right into a topic that's going to come right back that she heard about here this evening. But Planning Commission is very important, as all the boards are. But as I look at Mr. Green, knowing that with this position being filled, the Planning Commission is at fully staffed and all seats filled. They know there's always opportunities for training and movement forward, and it'll be right out of the gate for this. And there's many items coming forward that we heard at the work session earlier that the Planning Commission will have opportunities to weigh in on. So I just wanted to recognize Maria Zagorski, thank her for putting the application in, and we'll see how council moves forward. With that, unless there's any other comments?
Do we have to?
Yeah, we need
Your
a
Honor, I'll make a motion
you.
that we approve the resolution regarding the appointment to the Citizens Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Michaelangeli, supported by Councilman Lamore, on item 2409, the appointment to the Citizens Planning Commission. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Yes. Michaelangeli? Yes. Germaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Thank you. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is 2412, West Front Street Resurfacing Construction Management Contract.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a quick question regarding the purpose for this being put forward and perhaps not being included in the initial proposal. My anticipation is that it has has to do to inclement, whether it specifically relates to the overtime on West Front. Not the initial bid, so.
It's
Just
the
wondering as to what conditions led to cause that.
management contract to that versus the staff, but
Yep.
Mr. Lewis.
Down.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. Yes, what you saw previously was the MDOT funding contract. The local agency is required to provide any engineering services, either design or construction, on our own dime. And so that's an agreement that has to come in front of this council for approval. So we could have theoretically put it at the same time as the bids were due, but quite frankly, given our experiences before, we preferred to wait till the bids were open to make sure we had a viable project, because unfortunately, that's where we find ourselves right now. So we did solicit proposals, as I mentioned in there, from three firms. The three firms we've been the most comfortable with on projects like this, and in what I've said in the fact sheet is a recurring theme here. We can't find contractors. We also have a hard time getting consulting firms. Two of them told me point blank, we'd love working with you. We can't even find the people to put a proposal in. So fortunately, we are very comfortable with the awarded firm here, Manick & Smith. They are managing the First Street job at present. So, but this does have to be separate from the MDOT award, just because we're contracting directly with the vendor providing engineering services, and the funding contract is something we have to enter into with the state. So hopefully that answers your question, Councilman.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There you go.
Comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. A motion would be in order.
Your Honor.
Yes,
I
Councilman Felder.
motion that item number 2412, West Front Street resurfacing construction management contract, be awarded to the Manick & Smith Group for the amount of $82,855 with a not to exceed amount of, and that a total of $90,000 be authorized to provide any overtime or contingencies that might arise. And that the finance director be authorized to increase the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget for the major street fund by $152,000.
Second.
By Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, regarding item 2412, the West Front Street resurfacing construction management contract. Clerk, please call the roll.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Echoangeli?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
I have no further items, Your Honor.
So, council comments. Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. Want to briefly shout out to the Sieve family for doing a great job on the cleanup of Nortel Lanes. They have started to turn this tragic event into a potential bright spot in the city of Monroe. Thank you for your efforts on that. Weather is getting warmer. Many people are using our streets as drag strips. Please be considerate of all the citizens of Monroe when driving. Looking forward to an update on the public safety assessment soon. I'd like to thank Drain Commissioner Dave Thompson for showing up tonight and giving us an update on the cleanouts of the various creeks and drains in Monroe County. That was a great summary that he brought to us. I'd also like to thank American Restaurant for their hospitality during their grand opening this week, the past week. Their food we sampled was excellent, and the service was outstanding. Also, with this rainy season upon us, residents, please do your best to keep up with your lawns. We don't want the city to have to take care of those, so do your best in that regards. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Felder.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. A very happy Founder's Day to the Sawyer Homestead. This last Sunday, I was not there because I was at the Frenchtown Fiddlers' last concert, which of course has been a Monroe community fiddle group for the last dozen years or so. And then finally, that the MC3 Symphonic Band concert is this evening, and if you're here, you already missed it. So, just nice to know that there's events going on around town. Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilwoman Whitman.
Yes, Your Honor. I am looking forward to no rain and all the events that are scheduled for the summer at downtown Monroe. I think that what we're doing with our city is not just entertaining, but most of us work and we have other things in our lives where we don't even get to know our neighbors. And if you go to St. Mary's on Thursdays, they have music in the park. You get to see your neighbors. You get to meet new people. And I'm really looking forward to that after all this rain. I also would like to thank American Diner. They went the extra mile to entertain us, and we did not leave there hungry. I had to-go boxes that were in 2 bags, so it's another new business in Monroe, and I hope that people find it in their heart to support them. And you know, hopefully we get more businesses that see the wealth in downtown Monroe and want to start opening their businesses. And I think that as citizens of Monroe, it's our duty to visit some of these shops so that we can let other people see that. I went to that the one shop downtown. I can't remember the name of it, but I had leftovers from that restaurant too. Sitting all my leftovers down, did all the shopping, and got to know the lady that is running the shop. Got to know a lot about her. If I'd have been sitting at home or if I would have stayed at work, I wouldn't get the opportunity. So I hope you all step out in faith that Monroe is thriving, and we want it to thrive more. Thank you.
Leslie.
Thank you, Your Honor. I've got a couple questions for Mr. Lewis.
Push him out front.
Explain to me and the community how the funding works for the airport for capital projects.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
I was going to say, how short do you want this? First of all, again, Patrick
Thank
Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. Actually, ironic that you should bring this up. I was at the Michigan Society of Professional Engineers Conference in Lansing on Thursday, Friday, and we had an airport consultant from the Kent County Airport talking about airport funding, and I raised my hand and I said, what do you see as the prognosis for general aviation airports? He was going on forecasting for that, so rather interesting that we're having this conversation. I'll keep it shorter than that one was. Basically, we're considered a general aviation airport, and so we have a federal block grant entitlement every year of $150,000. That's in federal monies. It's one of the more generous federal programs in that it's a 90% contribution from the feds. It requires a 5% contribution from the state and a 5% contribution from the locals. As you might guess, our large-scale capital improvements programs cannot be funded solely with that entitlement money. Now, the one thing I did leave out, the entitlement monies there, unlike the federal highway programs, they can be carried over on the aviation side. They cannot be carried over on the highway side. So, for example, we can bank up to 4 years' worth of entitlement monies for a larger project, and that's what they expect us to do. So, like when we had a major repair of the concrete apron area and some of the pavement around the hangars, they expect us to bank those up. If you have a very large project like resurfacing the runway, which was done, seems like just a few years ago, but it was more like 7 or 8, they will have to bring discretionary money to the table because that's something we just simply can't accomplish with banking those. So it is one of the more generous programs when it comes to the percentage split. And so that's what was on tonight's agenda was the pavement markings portion where it was intended to be a tied contract, pavement markings and crack sealing. Like everything else, they ran out of time last fall, so the pavement markings are carrying over into a new agreement.
In terms of discretionary funding, can the city apply for discretionary funding?
That's an interesting question. There was talk during the stimulus program, during the ARA program time, that there might be some money brought to the table on airports. That was not in fact realized. I don't know if there were any airports that got funding, but I think the ones that did, if they were the major commercial services. In theory, yes, we could probably ask. We do ask every year in the form of our 10-year program, 10-year look ahead. Every year I go to Lansing in September, meet with the Aeronautics Board, and we have a consulting firm, a standing consultant that helps us out, laying out our plans, developing cost estimates for those. And we show them the runway is going to need a major rehab in 5 to 8 years. And so we're alerting them sort of to this, you're going to need discretionary dollars. And to their credit, the state has met our needs.
That's your ALP.
That's our ALP.
Okay.
Yep.
I guess where I'm going with this is I've noticed in several communities that are even smaller than Monroe. For example, City of Everett, City of West Branch, okay, City of Rogers City, communities less than 8,000, have very small but very beautiful and very technologically advanced terminal buildings. And we're still operating out of a pole barn.
That's
So,
probably being generous too.
yeah, it's being generous. So I'm asking the question, when are we going to start putting money into a new terminal building for the airport?
Well,
Let me take a shot at some of that, since I'm familiar with a couple of airports that had some experience. Unlike when and I've been gone 22 years now, we got almost $2.1 million to do a runway relocation, of which we received, obviously, I think we had to put 100 grand into a $2 million project for our 5%. But we did not get what Mr. Lewis alluded to, the 150,000 a year. It was on a case-by-case basis. And so that may be something that we have to look in. Is there a trade-off, if you will, for the ongoing funding for some maintenance-related items versus having, application, if you will, for a large-scale project like a terminal, or in that case, my case, 20-something years ago, was a runway relocation.
Yeah, I'm
25
not
years ago.
advocating expansion of the airport runways but I'm advocating that part of the infrastructure of the airport is the terminal building itself. And our terminal building is extremely deficient. So I know that we've put money into repaving the runways and doing the lighting and some of the other equipment, but when are we going to put money into the terminal, put a new terminal building up?
typically, I will say, one of the things that MDOT looks at, because they are, again, it's a block grant state, so MDOT receives the block grants and they have say over, large degree of say over what those projects go to. In fact, I've never actually talked to an FAA rep regarding any of our capital projects, so it's largely state-centered. They typically want all of your core infrastructure, your runways, your pavements, and those types of things done before they're going to entertain things like, they typically address that more along the lines of like revenue generating things like fuel tanks and hangars and things like that, because they're perceived to be revenue generators. And so they usually like to have all of the other things be up to snuff. And the problem is, since we don't have enough money to get a 5,000 foot, I mean, you look at the number of lane miles, we have basically like 12 lane miles of highway out there, because we've got a 100 foot or 100 foot wide by 5,000 foot long runway. So it's hard to ever be to a point where we can have those discretionary dollars work. Now, I don't know the mechanism by which some of those other airports got what they got. I don't know all the background on that. I'm willing to do some research and ask the questions, but I know that we've still got some catch up to do on those. And in fact, what we're calling the terminal building hasn't really been used as a terminal in a number of years. The sheriff's department has been using that hangar for their helicopter. And that's what I think you're referring to as the terminal building, the southernmost. It's sort of like a pole barn, as opposed to the Bay hangar, which was the project that was built in the late 1990s. That was when Grand Air was operating out of there, and that was kind of their main headquarters. We use that now for inside hangar space for some of our tenants. So that building's considered revenue generating. That building's in fair shape. The terminal building isn't really a terminal. It really hasn't been since I've been with the city.
Well, I mean, that's the point I'm making. It's really not a terminal, it's a pole barn. And the question is as part of our ALP, shouldn't we be thinking about putting a terminal building out there? If we want to anchor, no pun intended, the airport to make it part of our economic development program.
We'll look into it to see what we need to do as far as incorporating that into the ALP, and then what the funding sources could be that we could.
This is most definitely, I could have this conversation go on for quite a while, and I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, I didn't want to pull the airport off the agenda.
Oh, absolutely.
But I wanted to bring it up as a comment relative to what taking a look at
Follow it up on. Yeah.
Discussion. I appreciate you bringing it up. I'd be happy to talk about it further.
Researching some funding opportunities, or where others may have taken a path to get there. I think it's a good point.
So, thanks.
Councilman? That's it. Councilwoman Germaini?
First of all, I want to say how excited I am, how everything is falling into place for the Heritage Corridor. I can't believe how fast it's happening, because typically in the city of Monroe, it happens very slowly. So I'm very happy. Kudos to Mark. And also, the Port of Monroe, Paul Lamar has been appointed to the Maritime Transportation System National Advisory Committee. So not only is it going to continue to grow Monroe, our port, but he'll represent the region and the state. And I think that's great. And my hat's off to Paul. That's all.
Thank you. Just a few comments and a few recognitions here. Firstly, I'll make a comment because I talked about it once before. The census 2020 is coming up. It seems like it's far away. However, there's opportunities for employment for those that want to participate and assist with the 2020 census. And I'm not going to go through all what that is. In fact, I'll just state the website, which is 2020 census.gov/jobs. And while there's some of those have already happened, there'll be great needs of assistance come this summer. It's an opportunity for her to be involved and understand the importance of the census. It's not just trying to track people and track numbers. There's a lot of funding that we heard about this evening, heard about previously at our work session, how funding is based on what we get from the federal government at times. Opportunities come from the census. Also, what your districts are, and how many congressmen, senators you have, all those congressmen that come forward. So there's much to do about that. I'm not going to go through the long list, but this is more about letting people know the opportunity. If you're looking for some employment, you can go online, look through it. There's a lot of data, a lot of information. On April 27th, the Monroe Public Schools had the Generation E Showcase. What a great event. If you were able to attend, you saw over 170 different little teams of students from 6th grade to 12th that were putting out items that they were selling and what they were going to generate. It was nice to see what they were going to do with the revenue, some what they're going to contribute to nonprofits, and all their ideas. That's our next generation, Generation E. So I guess kudos to the Generation E Institute that is now housed here in Monroe, came from the west side of the state, is now going to be with partnership with Monroe Public Schools. I see there's a couple that were judging here at that and had a lot of fun to see the students, but looking forward to that in the future every year. If you get the opportunity next year to go, I highly recommend it and interact with the great youth that we have. Also, Arbor Day last week at Manor School. I want to give a thanks to Anthony Abbott, our forester, because all the great work he did in getting that put together. There's a thank you that came from our Manor School that's in the back of the chambers here if you want to look at it and see the notes from the students. But, besides Tony, all the work of the staff that went out and helped plant the trees, the nurse photos on that. Pat Weaver did a great job assisting here. I know Councilman Felder was there as well. I appreciate that. And, of course, the city staff, Mark, city manager. I could go on. There's a list. And I'm getting there. And Jody Egan, who did take some photos, but Clerk Treasurer Lavoie was there as well. It was really fun to engage with the students. 5 trees were planted out at Manor, and look forward to doing that in the future as well. This past weekend, I was at a fundraiser. I stopped in and look at the firefighters back there, and they're displaying some really nice haircuts that they had. There it is. That's what I wanted to see. For St. Baldrick's event, which of course is about raising funds and having haircuts and the use of that and what all that means with. Please look at the website. Nice event, a great turnout again. I saw at least 2 of the brave souls there that went forward with that. No, I did not. So I was there in support, though. There's activities coming up, and sometimes we hear as council, there's like, what are we going to do in the city of Monroe? We heard that before, and there's always something to do. Councilwoman said that. And May 18th, there's a lot of events, and some are opportunities to assist in the community, and others are to assist the residents in the community. So May 18th, and start your day first at 8 o'clock in the morning. I see that Les Lucas is here from the DDA. The DDA is going to have its downtown cleanup starting at 8 in the morning. Usually just goes about 11 o'clock. At the same time, right as that kicks off, is the Cultivate Community. And those that have awareness of that, last year I think there was easily 15 or 16 teams that came together as a group, made their contribution, and made support and assistance to our community of those that may be on fixed incomes or just unable to help do some minor repairs to their homes. I understand there's more than that this year, and maybe Clerk Treasurer might have some comments. I'll stop if she's going to have this, but we're having a final meeting on that coming up. But please, a great opportunity day. Even if you're not on a team, come down, join in, help out, and help somebody that has a need. and help the residents in our community that might need that. I know they're broadening that scope as well. The River Race National Battlefield Park's also having an activity that day, kind of an open house. You can go out there and help clean up out at the battlefield and get to know them as well. Last thing, I'm going to go back to where we talked about the Generation E. The Monroe Youth Advisory Council, and you're going to see them later here coming to council to talk about the activities they did. But one of theirs is also scheduled on the 18th, which are having a pop-up palooza. So it's kind of like these students with their activities and sales. They're going to pop up tents down at St. Mary's, and also there's going to be a car show there as well. This was driven by the youth themselves. Mark Cochran is kind of leading here from the city with that, along with Monroe Public Schools. And it's a great opportunity to see the youth in our community come down and support them. You know, look at what they're making. Look at, and some of the items there, they go, how did they do that? And here they're selling it and trying to make some revenue, but also help nonprofits. I think that's Arbor Day. Oh, I also want to make a comment. I want to give Chief Charles McCormick recognition. He finished the Chamber of Commerce Leadership of Monroe program this week. If he gets through the last day, coming up at the end of the week, I'm sure he'll be successful. The Leadership Monroe program is a great opportunity for people in our community to come and understand each what they're doing. I think about here in the city of Monroe, Loretta Point, our recreation director, has been through the program. Mark Cochran has been through the program. City Manager Vince Pastu went through the program last year. If you are a business, whether it be large company, private company, you're working in the Monroe region of the county, you should contact the Chamber of Commerce and look into being a participant in the Leadership Monroe program. It's not just about getting together once a month, but it's really you see things that you don't see unless you have the opportunity to do each of the activities each month. And I know the city manager is looking at opportunity of staff again this year from the city of Monroe to be a participant. So I think I'll stop there. My final comments. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
I do have a few things. I am fortunate I was able to participate last year and I'm participating again this year in the Cultivate community. And there are businesses that are involved in that and other organizations. Mine is a friends and family team, and we could use a few more hands to clean some gutters and plant some shrubs. So please feel free to contact me if you'd like to join in the fun. It's really great. It's a day-long event. And the best part about it is, in my opinion, is that when you're out there working, then the neighbors came out and started working in their yards. We've heard this story before. And before you knew it, there was just this activity that you don't see every Saturday afternoon, or all day actually Saturday, in a neighborhood. And it was just people getting to know each other, people that I don't have the opportunity to talk to. I had that opportunity, and vice versa. And it was just really great. And then at the end, there's a big celebration, and it was fun. It was a lot of work. It was warmer because it was later in the summer last year, but so it was hot and we were sweaty, and I don't even paint my own house, but so I make my kids do that. But I was out there painting, and it was just a lot of fun. So even if you're not on a team, I'd encourage you to drive through the neighborhood and just take a look at what it is all about. It's a really great initiative, and thank you to Jason Matthews and others in the AFL-CIO and labor who's gotten involved with that. Great opportunity. And it's not isolated. This brings me to something that's about the clerk's office, but we have a lot of events coming up. We have a lot of charitable solicitation opportunities that are coming up. And so I just wanted to remind people that the clerk's office does enforce the ordinances surrounding charitable solicitation, hawker peddler licenses if you want to go door to door and solicit people at their homes, food trucks, if you have a food truck and you'd like that to be operational in the city, we have permits for all of those things. Most of the processes are very simple, and my office is open every day from 8 to 4:30. We do not close for lunch. So if you have questions, give us a call or come down, and we'll be glad to walk you through all those processes. But it's just easier to talk to me first. You may not need a license or a permit for what you're going to do, but it's easier to talk with me first, and we'll take care of it ahead of time, make sure you have what you need, than to run into a little bit of conflict later on. And our neighbors in town are good about calling when people are knocking on their doors. They want to know if they're supposed to be there. So I want to be able to say, yes, it's okay, they've taken all the right steps. And then finally, when I was reading one of the motions for all of you earlier. It was because we have an election tomorrow. So the clerk's office will be up and running at about 5:15 tomorrow morning. It's a small election, involves 3 North, anyone who lives in the Jefferson School District. So it's a small number of voters, but it's run exactly like any other election. So the clerk's office will be open will be up, like I said, around 5:30. The clerk's office officially opens at 7, and we will be voting until 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. So if you're not sure if you fall into that district, please give us a call. Again, we'll be able to let you know if you should be
Thank you.
participating.
Councilman?
Go Bears.
Polling location?
Is at Grace Lutheran. We haven't moved it, so it's the regular 3 North Jefferson location. So we'll be in the gym just like we always are. That's a
you.
good question. Thanks for asking.
Thanks.
That's all I have.
Thanks. Mr. Pastu?
A few follow-up items that I didn't put in my update, but we talked at the last meeting about local flooding, particularly over in the Orchard East area and certainly the area over by 75. Mr. Lewis, we're working on another project, the St. Mary's Garden Storm Sewer Project, and we're going to have Spicer Engineering kind of give us a 30,000 level look at what we might be able to do in those areas for starters, and then keep drilling down as we need to. So the other item that came up had an individual that was looking to buy a property over on West Grove Street and expressed some concern with parking. Mr. Lewis met with him and resolved that related to clarifying some parking signs and that type of thing. He was satisfied with it. Councilmember Lamore mentioned public safety assessment. I spoke with the project lead with Fitch this morning. Again, still scrubbing and refining some of the data, but they're close. And so I'm guessing that maybe the first part of June, we may end up talking about having a special meeting to go through their findings at this point as the next step in the process. So I'm going to encourage them to try and wrap that up, and we'll look to schedule. If you have travel plans, let me know to try and work around that. But I'm guessing maybe first or second week of June, we'll try and target to have them in for that. So other than that, I think that's it.
Very good. Any comments from those present here this evening? Opportunity for citizens' comments not related to it. Well, the agenda's over, so there's a good haircut. Yes, sir.
Mayor, members of council, Frank Palumbo, city firefighter. I just wanted to make a comment regarding to the Cultivate community. I was at a team leader meeting recently, and Pastor Boone is opening the parking lot a couple days early at the Oaks of Righteousness. And if you have any donations, mulch or any kind of weed eater or anything that could go into this program, it's going to be open to the public and open for the teams if somebody's short on something. So feel free to stop by there in the couple days preceding. So Cultivate Community is going to be on the 18th. Stop by Oaks of Righteousness if you have any kind of donations whatsoever. I thought that'd be a good point to make. Thank you.
Thank you. They didn't get his sideburns, though. All the comments from those present here this evening? Seeing none, a motion will be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Yes. Eckelangeli? Yes. Germaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
And thank you.